welcome to Pink Hair Girl podcast. This is podcast number 4. I'm Sally Jane, otherwise known as Pink Hair Girl. I'm Pink Hair Girl on Ravelry and on Twitter, and on Instagram I'm Pink Hair Girl Knits. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy this episode with me today. I'm trying to record the podcasts every weekend because it's really impossible for me to record during the week with the 3 kids at homeschooling. It's just too noisy and chaotic and all the rest. But last weekend was really hectic, so I didn't get to podcast last weekend. So I'll try every weekend, but it's not always going to happen. And then usually with editing and our very, very slow upload speeds and internet speeds here in South Africa, I normally get the video ready for about Tuesday. So I'm going to try for that, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Let me tell you a bit about last weekend. Last weekend, Rachel on Saturday went to a youth ambassadors course that she's doing. It was through the Kaylee campaign, which is actually the girl she met when she won the lead SA for cutting her hair. And the other girl with her, Kaylee, runs the Kaylee campaign. And it's all about enabling young people, both able-bodied, because Kaylee has cerebral palsy, and it's about enabling those that are able-bodied and disabled to be youth leaders and to be ambassadors in their community and to focus on social entrepreneurship. So she went through to that. I took her through to that on Saturday, and she really, really enjoyed it. It was a very good program, and she's going to be doing that once a month. And then on Sunday, it was Caleb's birthday. So of course, we were out, we went to the castle. Let me start by saying, Caleb is very into knights and dragons and castles and all the medieval times and what the knights wore and how castles were built. And his favorite books to take out of the library are the eyewitness books on history and certain things that happened at certain times. So we don't really have very many old medieval castles here in South Africa. But there is something called the Castle de Castile in Cape Town. It's actually a fort. It was built by the Dutch East India Trading Company when the Dutch first set up a base here in Cape Town. And it was actually right against the water. And it was sort of the fort that guarded the bay when they came into Cape Town. And so we took him there for his birthday. And so part of why I didn't craft or didn't do the podcast, I haven't actually done all that much crafting, is because I was getting things ready for his birthday. Now he wants to be a knight, so I just made, so more sewing than anything else, I just made these little things. I don't know if you can see them. So it's basically just the top is cut, with a neck piece, and then it just is open, flat bits of sheet really. I had a bits of material left over from the wedding, and I made bust binding, and I sewed that all around the edges with some little ties that they could tie at the side, and then we put different emblems on each one. So that was Caleb's, and then this one was Rachel's. And then Titus was hilarious. You see, when we were choosing the material for the little knights costumes, he said, well, if they were going to be knights, they needed to be a princess. So he was going to be the princess. So, and he chose pink because the princess had to have pink. So I made this one. Here's the one out of pink. And we put the little emblem of the crown on top. And then on the day, he actually wanted to be a knight anyway, which I knew he would. But he was sort of half the princess and half the little knight. So that was what I was sewing last week. And then the geek made some little swords. Caleb invited one friend with him. We had a little party at home on the Friday for our homeschool group and his homeschool friends, and we had a night's cake and all sorts of things there. And then he was allowed to invite one friend with him to the castle. And then the geek made each of them a little sword and this sort of shield that's got my arm is too big, but they put their hand through here and then hold onto this, and then this becomes, this needs to be the other arm, hey, she's not as big a knife. This way around, and like this, and then they hold their shield in front of them while they've got their sword. And they were dead chuffed with this. They ran around. And of course, Titus was really upset that he didn't get one. So Emma will need to make him one too. So that was sort of more of the crafting that was happening for last weekend. And so we took them off to the castle, and Titus was the princess, and they had loads of fun. It was actually really nice going to all the different things. And look, it's not a medieval castle, but it was old enough to show, you know, cannons and how they load the cannons with gunpowder, and the different parts of the old fort, and there was banquet halls, and there was pretty stuff inside. So it was enough for him to feel like he'd gone on a castle expedition for his birthday. So that was quite nice. So winter has really arrived in South Africa, and now I know that those of you overseas are going to laugh at the idea of South African winter. And now I've lived overseas. I've lived in Switzerland, I've lived in England, I've lived in a couple of places, and sure, it's not nearly as cold during the day, and the temperature warms up quite a lot. It depends a lot on the region where you are and what the weather's doing. So for example, where I was born in Pretoria, up in the northern part of South Africa, it's very dry in the winter, very, very, very dry, and quite cold. It gets really bitterly cold, and because it's so dry, everything dries. Your lips dry, your face feels dry. It's very, very dry and very cold. The nights will go down to about -1, -2. And I know for those of you in Canada and in Scandinavian places like that, that probably sounds like a bit of a laugh. And then where my younger sister is on the Durban south coast side, the temperature never gets very cold. It's very tropical. It kind of stays very mild throughout the whole year. They get a very hot summer though. And then down here in Cape Town where I am, it's very wet in the winter. But the days that it's not, obviously the days that it's raining, the daytime temperature is a lot lower. But there I'm talking about sort of the daytime temperature being about 8, 9, 10, somewhere around about there. Not freezing cold at all, but the nights do get cold. So the biggest difference that I find between South African winter and living overseas is that our houses are cold. We don't have any, or most people don't have central heating. So overseas, while it might be desperately cold outside during the day, and when you go out you need like layers of coats and scarves and hats and everything to sort of stay warm, and scraping ice off the windshield and all that kind of thing. We don't have a lot of that here, although this year's been cold. There is some snow on the mountains, and there's even been snow on lower lying areas, which is quite unusual for South Africa. But the biggest difference is that at night our houses are cold. So if it drops down to 0, 1, -1, -2, that's what it feels like inside our houses. You know, it's not warm. And even during the day, if it heats up to about 15, 16 degrees, the houses are often a bit cooler, or, you know, if you like your house is sort of 15 degrees inside. And I know those of you that keep your heating bills low, or maybe only heat to about 15, 16 degrees, it's not warm. So you're cold a lot of the time. You know, you can feel cold in your house, and especially at night. The nights are very, very cold, quite bitterly cold. So I have been loving wearing more scarves and knitwear and things like that. And I got a great hat. I must show you my hat. On the Nurturing Fibers group, there is a giveaway thread, a kind of a share the love thread, and you can offer up yarn or anything that you'd like to offer up, and it's completely free, and it's on a sort of a first come first serve me please basis. So Celie Ann had knitted a Barry hat, and she didn't think that it suited her, didn't look so nice on her, so she put it up, and I very quickly grabbed that because I think it is great. The base color is from Nurturing Fibers, and was called Licorice All Sorts, which is these little spots of color on the black, and then she used a blue as the contrast color, and I think it's fabulous. It's got these little buttons. I think it's absolutely fabulous. Now I learned a trick on how to wear slouchy hats. I was watching the Dark Matters podcast. Now I know I'm a bit tall, so what she says you must do is you put it on. Let's just check that you can see that you put it on, and then you actually make a fold here, and then you fold this bit of the slouchy bit down towards the back so that it sits like that. So your hat must sit like that, you see. And you don't just kind of put it on and let it all sort of poof there. You actually put it down like this. And so Elizabeth Green Musselman, that does the Dark Matters podcast, showed how to do it. I think one of her students showed her. And so I'm passing on the tip. And actually she runs a really nice podcast. I've really enjoyed her Dark Matter Knits podcast by Elizabeth Green Musselman. You should go and check it out. Anyway, so I learned how to wear a slouch hat and I've loved it. I've been wearing that hat so much these last few days. So thank you very much, Celia, and I've been enjoying that hat very, very much. So I'd like to move on to the exciting part of this podcast, which the kind of theme that I'd like to base this podcast around today is all about socks. So I am a relatively new sock knitter. I think I've been knitting socks for maybe about 2 years. And I learned to do socks toe up, 2 at a time, magic loop, using the afterthought heel. So you just kind of cast your toe on and up you go, and you don't have to worry too much about what you're doing. You just, off you go, and you can put your waist yarn in where you want to mark your heel, but even if you're out and about, you don't know the exact point of the heel, or you're not sure of the person you're making it for, you can just keep going, and you can add the afterthought heel in later. You can even just snip. You don't actually have to have the thread in. You can even just measure it and snip that point as well. So these were the socks that I always made, and these were the first ones that I made for the Geek, grey, because that's what he liked. Now these heels were not originally red. So I have re-heeled, these were the first ones, and they must be maybe about 2 years old. And so I've re-heeled these ones once already. And then the second pair of socks that I made him, also grey, you can see, I don't know if you can see it here, this heel is so thin on the heel there. And the other one is completely through. The other one is just a big hole. Look at that. He's completely gone through that one. And this one I think is less than a year old. This pair of socks is less than a year old. And so I'm going to need to re-heel these ones again. And look, the bonus of an afterthought heel is that you can just rip that section out, obviously, and change it, which is really nice. So it makes it a very easy heel to replace, but I don't think it's the most hard wearing of heels. And through chatting about knitting socks and putting some stuff up on Twitter and various places like that, quite a few of my friends that are relatively new knitters, and especially those in South Africa, have been asking about socks. So I thought I would start, do an episode about socks, and especially where to get some of the stock stuff here in South Africa. Because we do have a few yarn shops, but not very many of them will sell sock yarn, and very few of them will sell, wool, proper wool. The South African market hasn't really cottoned on to the idea of paying for quality yarn. So they don't understand why you should pay 120 Rand for a ball of sock yarn when you can buy socks in the shop for sort of next to nothing. So it seems to be more difficult to understand. Although I tell most people, once you've worn a pair of hand knitted socks and once you've knitted socks, then you know all about it. Now I don't like to wear anything else but hand knitted socks. I must admit, I didn't ever think I would really be a sock knitter, but the bug really does bite. Once you started knitting socks, it really is a really nice thing to have some socks on the needles. So I started, doing the toe up 2 at a time socks, and it's an easy process. You land up with 2 finished socks at the same time, which is a huge bonus. But I remember sharing with you last time the socks that I pulled out. One, because I was worried about the sock yarn not having nylon in it, and I've decided not to knit socks without nylon anymore. I can't have holes in socks so often. And so I wanted to use the yarn for something else, but also because it got into such a ridiculous tangle. They got so completely tangled up, and because you're knitting from 2 ends, you have no loose end to sort of weave through it. I tried for weeks to try and figure out the tangle of the socks, and I'm normally not too bad at untangling things, but it was a total nightmare. So I pulled that out, and it was actually when I tested socks for Claire Devine, when she was busy testing her sock anatomy book, that I did socks 1 at a time, and I actually thought I really liked this a whole lot better. And I know that you can get your sort of second sock syndrome, but I actually really like the process of just focusing on doing one sock at a time. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately, kind of branching out from the typical plain vanilla sock with the afterthought heel and trying a few other heels. And that was a really nice thing about Claire's book. Now, Claire's book is called Sock Anatomy, and it's got 9 sock patterns, but they're for babies. They range from a very small, I think, to about 12 to 18 months, somewhere around about there. And these socks are such an introduction into sock knitting, and her book is brilliantly laid out. Claire is a teacher, so everything is exceptionally well explained in the book. She goes into great detail about how socks are formed, if you're going toe up, if you're going toe down, where the gusset is, what the afterthought heel looks like, or if you're doing a heel flap, what it looks like, all of these, demystifying all of these terms that are used in knitting socks. And so in sort of working on some of her socks, I learned a great deal. And in every sock, what she's done is she's done a different toe and a different heel in every pattern in the book to teach you different patterns, but in a small form. You know, you've just got a little baby sock to do. So it's really not that difficult, and it doesn't feel like it takes that much time, and you can learn a new technique and feel like you've achieved something quite quickly. And then, so that was sort of my first sort of move away from just plain socks. And look, I really still like the idea of just putting easy socks on the needles and having them when you're around and you're out and you need to do some sort of no thinking knitting. But I'm not sure I would carry on doing the afterthought heel. I think there are heels that are probably stronger, and I'm going to be trying some of those. So yeah, Claire's book is £9, which is like £1 a sock pattern, which is brilliant. You can buy the patterns individually as well, but the book is well worth the money for all the extra that she gives you in the book. So if you're new to socks, that is my absolute recommendation, is to go and get Claire's Sock Anatomy book off Ravelry, and she walks you through literally from the beginning to the end of socks. I'm going to link in the show notes, and I did a blog post about where to find good yarn here in South Africa, so I'm going to link to that again for the South African viewers. For those of you overseas, you're often spoiled for a choice of different sock yarns. The other thing I think I'm going to try and get my hands on, because I've got some really nice sock yarns that don't have nylon in it. It seems such a pity never to be able to make socks from them. I'm going to try and get, apparently you can get like just a spool of nylon that you can knit with as you knit your socks, and then that gives you the extra strength. And I'm not sure if you would just do it on the heel part, or if you do it, I suppose, perhaps under the foot as well. If you want a really long lasting sock, you may need a little bit of nylon there too. I know you can get it in Germany, I'm not sure. So what I might do is ask my friend Googs in Germany if she would send, mind posting some to my sister in England, and then my dad and Caleb can bring it back when they go to England later this month. So I might try that as well for sock yarn. But really, if you're going to go look for sock yarn, especially as a beginner, I would say look for something with nylon in it, something that's got a bit of strength in the socks. So the latest pair of socks I've knitted for the Geek, I can't show you the full pattern because it's one of Claire's. It's going to be going into the book, and this one we've kind of kept a bit of a secret. Now he has worn these, so I'm just going to show you this side, because this is just the plain rib side. The pretty pattern is on the other side. But aren't these sock blockers cute? I haven't had sock blockers before. I got these from Vicky at Strawberry Lane Crafts. These lovely perspex. Can you see? Because they see through, so I'm not sure how much you can actually see of those. But these really nice. And Strawberry Lane Crafts, she's on Etsy, and she does these lovely sock blockers. So I'm so impressed. And I can, when I want to show you socks, I can actually show you them on sock blockers, which is really nice. So these ones that I did for the Geek were in the Nurturing Fibers Man Sock. And these are, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to have to write the base down in the show notes. It's merino, and it's got nylon in it, and I think it's got mohair. I think it's mohair as well. So the extra mohair and the nylon and all the rest make it much harder wearing socks. And then I did, this has got a textured heel, and a textured heel actually helps a lot for sock strength as well. So this will be, this sock pattern is actually going to be in the South African book. I really wanted a pair of socks in the book, and those are going to be called Josie socks. They Claire lived in Johannesburg and designed the socks for me. I'm not a sock designer. I've never designed socks. I'm very new to knitting socks, so it just felt like something that was a bit out of my comfort zone for designing. And Claire's a very accomplished sock knitter and designer, so I asked her if she would guest design the socks for the book. So those are the Josie socks, and they're going to be in the South African book, so I'm quite excited about that. But I've got something even more exciting. A lot of you, especially the South Africans, might be new to knitting socks, and for you this prize is extra cool because it'll be everything that you need to start knitting socks. But even for those of you that are seasoned sock knitters, this is a really nice prize. So what you're going to get is, this is all wrapped up pretty, so I didn't open it. So I'll show you my one, which is open already. It's from Natural Yarns, and I'll link to them in the show notes. And it is a pair of Knit Pro Nova, and these are 2.25s, but the ones in the pack are 2.5, because that's a very standard sock knitting needle size. So these are my new sock needles. I'm trying to go down in my tension a bit to see if it helps firm up my socks to make them a bit stronger. And there are some sock patterns that knit slightly looser, like the Hermione Everyday Socks, which I'll show you later on in my work in progress. What you'll find is that some socks, the Hermione does a purl every now and again. It's a bit like, not quite as loose as Moss Stitch, but it loosens up your fabric a bit, and then you want to go down a needle size. So I think the pattern calls for 2.25, and I actually, when I swatched, went down to a 2. So that's what I got, smaller sock needles. So for the giveaway, you're going to win a pair of 2.5 circular sock needles from Natural Yarns. Thank you very much, Gina, for this great prize. And then you're going to win some sock yarn from Heartland. And this is called Howling North Wind. It's an 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. And it's 100 grams, 365 meters sock yarn. And so it is really beautiful. It's got little bits of pinks and grays. Oops, get stray yarn on there. Sorts of different colors. So you're going to win, you can win some really nice sock yarn. So that's very nice. Michelle from Heartland donated this prize for that. And then you're also going to win a copy of Claire's Sock Anatomy book. So you're going to have the book and the needles and the yarn, and you're going to be all set to knit socks. For those of you that know how to knit socks already, it's a great prize because the yarn is beautiful. And if you haven't knit from Claire's book before, it's really an excellent, excellent book. And for beginners, this is a fantastic prize because it really is a phenomenal introduction into sock knitting. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, Claire's book is called Sock Anatomy because really she does sort of break down the sock into all the parts. And then she's very cute. She chose the names for the socks based on the foot anatomy. So there are things like phalanges and bursa, flexor, brevis. It's really cute. They've each got little names of a part of the, anatomical part of the foot, which I actually thought was really, really clever. So that's going to be the prize for the giveaway for my sort of sock themed podcast this time. So what you have to do to win the prize is to come along to join my Ravelry group, and I'll put the links in the show notes for that. Come along and say hi, leave a comment, tell me, have you knit socks before? Are you an experienced sock knitter? If you are, what's your favorite type? Do you like to cuff down, toe up? Which is your favorite sort of heel? And if you're a brand new sock knitter or you've never knitted socks before, then come and tell us too. Just say, hi, I'm a complete newbie, so I need this sock pattern, this sock prize set. So please just come and tell us, leave a comment, and that will be your entry into the draw for winning this sock prize. And then you can get an extra entry. I'll leave all the details on the blog, but you can get an extra entry by retweeting the podcast, and on Instagram by retweeting the competition, and I'll put all that up with the details on the show notes. So that's a really great prize, and I think I might actually run it for 2 weeks, just to give quite a few people a chance to enter that. So I'm going to I won't talk all about socks next time as well, but I'll just mention the prize again next time and refer to this podcast, and people can sign up and leave their comments next time as well. So we'll run it for 2 weeks, and then you can win this really amazing prize. So I'm quite excited about that, because as I said, I was quite new to sock knitting, but I'm really enjoying it. It's really one of those things that's really therapeutic, to have a pair of socks on the needles. I don't think I feel like my array of knitting that I have to do is quite complete if I don't have a pair of socks on the needles. At the moment, I'm doing the Hermione Everyday Socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, with a bit of a link to the Harry Potter, which is quite nice. And I'll show you those when I do my work in progress section. So that's all about socks. That's my sock knitting journey, and how I've kind of moved on. And look, I still think I'll probably do vanilla socks every now and again. The great thing about Afterthought Heel is when you're knitting, especially when you're out, you can just keep going. You don't have to worry about which point you are in the pattern and do you need to stop now. So especially when I'm with Rachel and we're at swimming or somewhere like that, I don't need to suddenly think, oh, how many rows have I done? Am I at the point where I need to put the the gusset in for the foot, or to put the the heel flap or whatever it is, and then start looking at patterns and all this. So I find the Afterthought are really easy to do, because it's just so, you don't have to think, and then you can just come home later on and then pop your heel in. And of course you can take the heel out as easily to re-heel it. So I'm sure I'm going to knit those again, but I really would like to knit a whole lot more, just sort of add to my repertoire of sock knitting. And yeah, to my repertoire of sock yarns as well. So that's my my sort of sock journey. I'd really like to take on knitting a lot more socks. And I've been telling Claire that she needs to either size up the socks from her Sockernating, or do a sock range for children through to adults, because I know that my 2 other kids keep begging and asking, when am I going to knit them some socks? And they want some Claire socks. So I hope that Claire, you're going to make some kiddie and adult socks, please. Because the children, Caleb and Rachel, want some socks. So you need to design, size up those socks, and get the anatomy for kids out, please. This is a request from Rachel. So that is my sort of all about socks this time. And really, it wasn't something I thought I was going to be knitting. Socks was just, didn't seem that interesting. And I know if you haven't knitted socks before, I know exactly what you're thinking, because I was the same. But it really is actually quite fun. They really are nice to knit, and they are amazing to wear. I think until you have worn hand-knit socks, they are really so nice to wear and so warm. I don't think I can wear anything else anymore. So while I'm having a sip of my tea, I'm going to tell you how my Whole30 is going. I remember I mentioned in one of the podcasts that I was going to start the Whole30, which is basically an elimination diet, but more for health reasons than for weight loss reasons. I'm not specifically trying to lose a whole lot of weight, but there is some health issues that I'm trying to sort out. And I was really worried about having tea without milk in it, because I'm quite fond of sort of rooibos tea without milk. I found kicking the coffee habit was bad enough, but the thought of having nothing, especially now in the winter, not really having a warm beverage at all, that was a bit daunting. And I was at my Let's Get Crafty group, which is a group where a couple of ladies here in Cape Town meet on a Tuesday night once a month, and we meet at the one lady's house, and we do, I mean, it's not just knitting, it's sort of all sorts of crafting, although there are 3 of us that usually knit, and a couple of ladies have started knitting and crocheting as well, and so that's been quite fun to watch their journey into starting with knitting and stuff. But Alex, that was at the group, suggested trying rooibos tea with a slice of orange in it, which is actually really, really nice, because before the Whole30 started, I went to go and buy some fruit teas for myself so I could stock up on some teas. And they're rather expensive a box. You don't get very many in that sort of Twinings box. And it was over, well over 50 Rand. And I thought, good gracious, this is going to be a very expensive tea drinking habit. And she mentioned just, for your everyday cups of tea, it's really nice to have those Twinings ones. But for your everyday cup of tea, it's quite nice just to have rooibos with a slice of orange in it. I mean, I've heard of tea with lemon, but the orange is actually really nice. It gives that little bit of sweetness and a little bit of interest so the rooibos tea isn't so boring. So thank you, Alex. It's working like a charm. And Alex runs a really lovely food blog, which I will link to in the show notes, which I am totally avoiding at the moment on my Whole30 because it's just about nothing that I would be allowed to eat on there at the moment. So basically for 30 days, you cut out dairy and all forms of gluten, most carbohydrates, rices, grains, pulses, legumes, everything like that. And so what do you eat? You ask. You eat meat, good quality meat. You eat vegetables and fats, good fats. So olive oil, coconut oil, those kind of things. You can have any animal fats and you can have lard, or you can't have butter because you completely cut out dairy, which I must admit has been the hardest part. And then no sugar and no sweeteners at all. No honey, no stevia, no, and not because, I mean, in many like paleo diets, those kind of things, which is probably more, I lean more towards the sort of paleo kind of diet in the end. And not because those things are necessarily bad on their own, but what this is trying to do is highlight our often mental connection to food, and that when you have eaten and you start craving something sweet or whatever, you don't need to eat food. There is a craving and often an emotional need that we're trying to meet through our food. And so it's about clearing out your system too, and that sugar can wreak all sorts of havoc in your body. And so it's really about cutting out all sugars and sweeteners completely. They give you a little breakdown on the Whole30 page about how you're going to feel each day. And I think because I had mostly cut out gluten and most carbohydrates before I'd started this, I didn't find that too difficult, and I did cut down on the sugars and stuff. So I haven't found it too difficult. It can get a little bit boring at times. It's not too bad though. But I must admit there's occasional sort of cravings for a few things. I haven't had the day, it said day 4 or 5 I'd want to bite everybody's head off and be really aggressive and angry and stuff, and I didn't really find that. I suppose I had less detoxing to do because I'd kind of cut out a lot already. But I'm interested to see the phase there's supposed to be where you start dreaming about your contraband food, sort of dreaming about Oreo cookies and stuff, and then apparently there's a bit where your people start turning into shapes of food. I can't wait until my husband's head looks like a lint ball of chocolate or something. But apparently, obviously not everybody goes through the same thing, but they say often, with the cravings, your mind will play any kind of tricks on you that it can to try to get you to give in and give it what it wants. So yeah, as I say, I'm kind of doing this for health reasons. There are some health issues that I'm trying to fix. And the Whole30 on their website, I mean, they list in their I suppose, reviews or sort of people's testimonials, things like that. They list all sorts of things that this has helped with. People have had fantastic success with thyroid problems and fertility problems, with all sorts of autoimmune diseases, the whole range of autoimmune diseases, as I say, balancing hormones, skin problems, depression, a whole host of things, arthritis and all sorts of other things. So it hasn't been that bad. I mean, I'm only on day 6 so far, so there's quite a way to go. But yeah, I'm managing. So thank you very much, Alex, for the tea tip, because that has helped hugely. So I have the fruit teas and other things, but just to be able to make a normal cup of rooibos tea, throw a piece of orange in, and oranges are really cheap at the moment because it's winter. So it's the geek bought an entire bag of oranges, so just to throw a slice of orange in the tea has been so easy. So that's been really great. Sorry for anyone that's not interested in the Whole30, you can just kind of blank over this, but I'll link in the show notes for anybody that is interested, and I'll write up a separate blog post a bit about my Whole30 journey if anybody wants to ask more questions about that. So I think now let's move on to my finished objects and work in progress. Okay, so I don't have that many finished objects. Besides the sewing that I showed you already, that's not really technically speaking knitting. And the other finished object I got might not technically be classified as finished, right? So, as you know, I needed to finish Caleb's Pegasus horse for his birthday, but it is very minus a tail and a mane and wings because I ran out of the undyed yarn. So I need to get some more undyed yarn before I can finish his little Pegasus. But that's what I have so far. His little face, his little bum. He's very sweet. And Caleb has been terribly patient with me about this, I must admit. So I just need to order some more undyed yarn. And this is from the Fatty Lumpkin pattern, The Brave African Pony by Heidi Bears. And I will again link to that in the show notes. So that's his Pegasus, and then it's going to get wings and the mane and the tail. And I think I'm going to do the mane and the tail predominantly white with a little bits of the green and the blue in the mane, and then the wings will be white. So I know it's not totally a finished object, but I did promise, well, I said last time that I was going to try and finish Caleb's Pegasus, and so I just thought I'd better show you how far I got. So that was that. And my other finished object for the week, I can't actually show you. I will try to do one of those nifty picture insert things again if I can, or something. But when I was at the petrol station on Monday morning, in South Africa there are people that pump your petrol or gas for you, petrol attendants. I don't know, there just always has been, and I suppose it's part of employment, you're helping with extra employment in the country. I don't know, I found it quite daunting the first time I lived overseas and I had to pump my own gas. It was quite, I don't know, this must seem ridiculous to anyone who's ever always only pumped your own gas, but in South Africa people do it for you. You pitch up and then you just ask them to fill up your car for you. And so they don't get paid a huge salary, so I always try to tip afterwards. But the petrol attendant, and it is cold. The mornings and evenings are really starting to get cold here. And so the petrol attendant saw me wearing a hat and he said to me, "Did I knit the hat?" So I said, "Yes, I did." And so he said, "Well, how much would I charge him to knit him a hat?" So I said to him, "I'd knit him a hat." I didn't mind. So he gave me his mobile number. And I asked him what colour he wanted. And he wasn't fussy. He said, "No, really, any colour." He didn't mind. And then he giggled and he said, "But maybe not pink." Because I was wearing a pink hat and I was the pink hair and all the rest. So he said, "No, anything, maybe a dark colour, black or something like that." So I knitted the petrol attendant a hat. And I went on Friday to go and gift it to him. And inspired by the website or blog Girl with Cake, I've been kind of wanting to do something of a sort of like a random act of kindness or something with knitting or giving knitting away or something like that. So the Girl with Cake, what she does, she's also in Cape Town, is she bakes cakes and she gives them away to complete strangers in the street that she really thinks need a little bit of luxury in life, because life is hard for some people. And she finds homeless people or people on the streets or people near newspaper sellers, or it's cold and it's wet, or security guards or whatever it is. She finds them and she gifts them a cake. But now I'm not talking a bog standard vanilla cake, slap on a bit of chocolate icing and give it. She bakes like gourmet cakes. She bakes like Lindt chocolate covered cake with truffles all over the top, and she bakes, I mean, they are just the most amazing, decadent, beautifully decorated cakes. And then she goes to go and find somebody randomly. Sometimes she has the person in mind before, and sometimes her plans change as she goes along. And then she gifts the cake to the person. And the reaction is always very different, and people are quite startled, or and so it was very interesting to watch her journey of how she gives away these cakes, and she encourages other people to do the same, and to bake cakes and give them away. Now, especially with sort of trying to be gluten-free and on a whole sugar-free thing, I'm kind of not baking cakes at the moment. So I thought, well, I could do something with knitting. And I hadn't really thought about it too much. So when the petrol attendant asked me if I would make him a hat. It seemed like the perfect opportunity. So I knitted the, let me find, it's called the Regular Guy Beanie by Chuck Wright. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. So I knitted that for him in I think it's like a dark navy blue, and it just had a grey stripe running through the top. And I gifted it to him on Friday, and he was quite delighted. And I said to him that there was no payment for the hat, that the only payment was that he should pay it forward, that he should be kind or do something really nice for somebody else. And I think that's my general encouragement to everybody that watches the podcast, is to pay it forward, to find something that you can do, whether it's to knit something for somebody that you really think could benefit from it, somebody that's maybe grieving or sad, or somebody that's cold or lonely, or an elderly person, or a pair of socks for your grandpa. I don't know, whoever it is, but just the idea of paying it forward, of taking time out of crafting for ourselves and for our loved ones, to craft for a stranger or somebody that you know in need, that could really do with it, could, you know, really do with a hat or whatever, you know, whatever you decide to craft. So I encourage you to pay it forward, and to yeah, to just spread a little random act of kindness around the world. I think if we all just do little things now and again, we really can make quite a big difference. The world can feel like a much better place. So those were my really only finished objects, except for I did a sewing project, which I'm going to show you. Now I'm cheating a little bit by showing you the sewing project, because this is my, I'm part of the South African winter swap, which was kind of coincided with the football as well. So we had to pick a theme, a country. You had to pick one country, and then you had to base your swap around that country. So it could be a country you liked, or a country that your swap partner liked, or whatever it was, and the partners were allocated randomly. So you don't know who is sending to you. So I know that even if my swap partner watches the podcast, they don't know that this bag is for theirs. I made a project bag. I made a big size. Sorry, this has got some stuff in it. I made a large size project bag. You can see it there. And I will link to the blog. It's a free online tutorial, and it was dead easy. I made it, I haven't sewn in quite a while, and I made it in a single morning while Titus was at school. I made it so big because I actually wanted to include 3 rows of people more than anything else. And also because sometimes I think it's quite nice to have a big project bag. If you're doing a sweater or a cardigan or something where you want to put a few more things into your project bag. So I got this fabric from Claire before she moved from South Africa to Edinburgh. She was getting rid of some of her extra sewing stuff. And what I love about it is it's all the country, the flags of the world. Like you can see, this one over here is actually England's Great Britain flag, but they've switched up all the colors. So like I think this one would probably be something like Japan with the circle in the middle. I mean, there's Brazil, and they've just mixed up all the colors. It makes it like really interesting. Interesting take. I guess it was just all people, you know, that whatever the color of the flag or the color of the person or whatever, kind of feels like this bag is about people in unity. I don't know if it really is, but that's my interpretation from the fabrics. I thought that was really fun for a world swap. And then because I'm seriously indecisive and probably a bit anarchist and don't always follow the rules, I couldn't pick a country. I just couldn't settle on just one country. So I'm kind of doing a world tour with my swap parcel. So I'm not going to show you everything, but even my yarn isn't really one country focused. It's a kind of a bit of a tour around the world. So Rachel and I made some little hammer bead flag. Oh, that's the Russian ones. That one goes that way. We picked some flags that were easy to do, and there was Sweden and Italy, Germany, England. So we made some little hammer bead world coasters, and I've got some buttons that fit in with a certain country, and I've got something, I'm not going to show you everything. I've got some various bits and bobs from like that I've kind of linked to different countries around the world. So I've done my swap on sort of a little trip tour around the world. So I know it's cheating a little bit, but they will get a nice swap parcel. It will include yarn and everything else that I was supposed to include. So I just wanted to show you my This is my first drawstring bag. I'm so chuffed. I'm like dead chuffed. This was such an easy tutorial. So I'm going to link to that. The tutorial on making the bag in the show notes, because that was seriously quite easy, and I felt like such a hero for having finished it in one morning. Okay, and my works in progress, those that I mentioned the very first time that I did sort of work in progress section and never mentioned again, you can probably just presume that those are tucked up in the cupboard somewhere. But what I'm going to share with you now, instead of hauling everything out all the time and I'm not working on half of them, is just the stuff that I'm literally working on at the moment. So I was talking quite a bit about socks. So this is my Hermione's everyday sock. See, it's got this kind of a pearl stitch every now and again. I've just started the heel flap. Oops, tangly needles. So you can see I'm just knitting across just this part instead of round and round at the moment. So I've just started the heel flap, which is a modified Eye of Partridge, I think, which is apparently supposed to be quite a strong heel. So, and this is also in Carde's Man Sock, which is sadly no longer available, because it is actually a really nice sock yarn, and not just for men. I know it's called Man Sock, but it's actually really nice. And so this was in the Jacaranda colorway. I know I shared this before. And I am knitting these as part of the summer knit along. I know it's not summer here at all, but the summer knit along on the Geeky Girl Knits podcast. And if you haven't watched their podcast, pop over, because they're great fun. I really enjoy watching Cece, who's Java Pearl, and her daughter, who do a really nice podcast from Edinburgh. So I'm knitting those socks for their knit along. And then I'm still busy with the Big Sister, which I showed you for, I think I just started it last time. I don't think I was that far. I don't think I was off the top yet. So there's the yoke, like that. And then you just join it. You cast those bits off and then join again. Do a bit of an increase, then join the whole thing in the round, and then it's rolling a little bit here. And then I'm going to do some of the same of these sort of garter ridges on the bottom to make a hem. The original pattern is for dress, and I mean I'm that far along, and I've got this ball left and one more, and this is in, find it for you, Peyton's SWS, which is soy wool stripes, and it is, let's just find the content here, 70% wool and 30% soya, and it is 100 meters in, this is an 80-gram ball. So I've got one more. So I'll see how far it goes. It might not be a full dress. I haven't really done increases for it to flare out. I'm kind of you're making it much more sort of straight, and then I'll put the sort of hem around the bottom. So it'll probably be more like a sort of a top than a dress as per se. So that's the other thing I'm working on, and that's by Tora Froseth, I think. I'm not entirely sure. And it is 45 Norwegian kroner on Ravelry, the pattern. And the Hermione Everyday Socks is a free pattern, and I'll link to that as well. And now the last thing that I'm working on, remember I showed you the dragon skin baby wrap that I'd got, that it was kind of an inherited project that I'd got after Yvette died, and I needed to finish it for her friend's baby. So it's been sitting, because I contacted the designer the first time to say, could she help me with the pattern? She'd said yes. And then the pattern was supposed to be available on Interweaves, and so I went there and it just said out of stock. So I actually know how to get the pattern, so I contacted the designer again and I just said, look, you know, the pattern says it's out of stock. I'm quite happy to buy it, I just need to be able to get hold of it. Anyway, I haven't heard from her at all, and I really felt I needed to get on with this, because I didn't know what size it was, and I don't know if it's going to, you know, how long it's going to be and how long it'll fit the baby for. So, oops, I seem to be a bit tangled up here. let me show you what I did. So basically what was done last time, there were the front, so you used to sort of cast on the front, have done the front, add on for the arms, and then she'd kind of knitted up the side of the arm. So she'd done this front bit, and then she'd knitted part of the arm, and it was all in sort of a big loop. So what I did was, it looked like the neck had actually finished, because it all seemed to come to a point, and when I looked at the pattern. So what I did was to put the two pieces the right way around next to each other, to join them up, to add on some stitches across the back for the neck, which I just need to crochet the edges for rolling a little bit. And then she hadn't done a pattern in this whole section here. On the actual pattern, this all has the dragon skin, and this all has the dragon skin. So I kind of thought that I didn't know whether to carry the pattern on at the back, and with adding on the stitches and all the rest, I really wasn't sure. But the sleeves obviously were going to go round in a circle. They needed this dragon skin pattern to carry on. And I didn't really know. I could sort of work it out. So I just thought, well, let's Google, because, you know, Google's your friend, and see if the pattern is somewhere else. And there is a free pair of socks on a blog called the Dragon Skin Socks. And it had a chart with the exact pattern repeats. That was excellent. You know, I didn't need to know the construction of the jersey as such. I could work out most of it. But and the size and stuff, all I needed to know was the stitches, so that I could finish the pattern down the bottom of the sleeve. So I finished the pattern down each sleeve, and I've sewn those up. And then I've decided to make the back plain, mostly because I wasn't really sure what her plan was, because a lot of it she'd seem to do plain by the top of it. And I also thought on the back of it, it'll just go really loads quicker, and I don't have to figure out the size and how to fit in the pattern for the size and all the rest. So I just have done the back plain. And in a way, I kind of like that, because I kind of feel that her hand has knitted on most of it that's pretty, if you know what I mean, like the pretty front of it and the little crossover and all the rest. So let me see if I can hold that up. So it'll go like this. So these little sleeves, they're quite wide sleeves, like a kimono almost. And then it's got a little flap here. And I think it gets an I-cord, but I might make little ribbons, I'm not sure. I don't have a lot of yarn. I've only got this little bit of yarn left, and there's no more. I'm really hoping I'm going to have enough to finish the back. My only concern, I'm not sure what to do, is the back, because I'm doing it stocking stitch, obviously. I can't end it stocking stitch because it's going to roll. And this pattern in the front obviously prevented it rolling a little bit, not much. I had hoped that if I had enough yarn to do an I-cord all the way around the bottom and then sort of round this scallopy bit, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm not really sure. If anybody's got an idea of something that would look congruent between the front with this little dragon skin stitch, which obviously is slightly scalloped edge, and what to do on the back. The problem is you don't want to add a pattern right on the back, and I don't know if a 1x1 rib would look out of place on the back. When I might do a 1x1 or a 2x2 rib just to keep it, because that's really all I've got enough yarn for, is just to sort of, so I don't have that much for more. If I match up the sides, I've only got sort of about that little bit more knitting, so let's hope my yarn lasts. So I've kind of done the best I can with this without knowing what the pattern was doing at all, just sort of looking at the pictures and sort of just trying to figure it out and finish it as best as I can. So that's the dragon skin wrap that Yvette had started, and hopefully I can finish that and get that to her friend. So that's all I've got, really. That's all I've been working on. I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode with me, and remember to go and leave a comment on the group. I'll put the links in the show notes, and come and win the sock yarn. It's been great to chat to you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.